My wife's affair was exposed by her own parents. Now, they want to disown her and leave me their $2 million inheritance. Should I accept it? My wife, Nicole, 27F, and I, 29M, had been married for a year before I filed for divorce after discovering she was cheating on me with one of her coworkers. Interestingly, it was my in-laws who revealed the affair to me and advised me to file for divorce as soon as possible. Nicole is the sole child of her rich parents, Frank and Leah, who run a large pharmaceutical firm. Nicole and I met on a dating service around 3 years ago and hit it off on our first date. After 1 year of living together, I proposed, and we married shortly thereafter. Her parents, Frank and Leah, were always quite nice and seemed to like me. Nicole always joked that I was the son they never had, and it truly seemed that way. They treated me like family from the moment I met them. They were warm, friendly, and grounded despite their affluence, which I greatly respected. I grew up in an emotionally unstable home. My parents did not love each other but stayed together for my sake, resulting in regular arguments. Neither was affectionate, and while we are still in touch, family dinners feel more like chores. But Nicole's family was different. They felt like my own people, and I instantly relaxed around them. While I knew they liked me, I never dreamed they would support me over their own daughter. Nicole and I have always had a smooth and loving connection. We had little fights, as any couple would, but we always worked them out. So, when my in-laws invited me over to their house to talk about something important, I had no idea they'd reveal Nicole's infidelity. Nicole works for her father's company and is in charge of recruitment. Because it was a family business, they could easily keep an eye on her and observe that she was spending a lot of time with one of the new hires. What made it even more horrible was that the man she was having an affair with was much younger than her. He had recently graduated from college and was just 21. It was legal, but it seemed unusual that Nicole, despite being happily married, felt compelled to pursue attention outside of our marriage. Her parents had seen the growing intimacy between the two of them and even asked Nicole about it to be sure. She assured them that they were just close friends and that nothing untoward was happening. This worried her parents, not only because it would have an impact on our marriage, but also because it could lead to legal action. Nicole was in a higher position than the guy she was associated with, and if things went wrong, he could potentially use it against the company and sue them. Despite her parents' persistent questions about their relationship, Nicole argued that it was entirely professional and that there was nothing else to it. Unfortunately, her parents found it difficult to trust her. Despite their cautions, Nicole continued to see him outside of work. They initially refused to notify me because they did not believe it was their responsibility. It was plausible that this was just a harmless friendship. However, things escalated, prompting her parents to intercede. They hired a private detective to keep tabs on Nicole. They had no money issues, so they were able to hire a professional for the work. The detective discovered that Nicole was frequently visiting the other person after work hours. She would tell me she was with friends or working late, and I believed her, but her parents later disclosed that this was not the truth. Every day, once her workday finished, she would go over to his house and spend a few hours before returning home. We all knew that if she was lying to me, something was definitely wrong. When I found out, I was devastated. I sincerely loved Nicole, and a part of me still does, but finding out that she had been cheating and lying for months destroyed me. This news came about a week and a half ago, and I still remember how upset I was during the meeting with my in-laws. They, too, were very saddened when they told me the truth. Knowing Nicole would never confess, they believed it was best for them to come forward. Nicole had no notion her parents knew the truth. I was the first one they informed. I cried in front of them, but they consoled me as if I were their own kid. They reassured me that it was not my fault and that they had seen how well I treated Nicole. This was completely her doing. She didn't appreciate the love she received from her parents and me, and she tossed it all away for someone she'd only known for a short time. I stayed at their house that night because I couldn't bring myself to go home and confront Nicole. They kindly let me spend the night, and I cried the whole time. I was rattled and unsure of what to do next. Logically, I understood the next step was to file for divorce, but my heart wasn't ready to give up on her just yet. The following morning, I decided to return home before Nicole went to work. I hadn't returned any of her calls or texts the night before, so she was astonished when I walked in just as she was ready to leave. I was plainly in horrible shape, and she was concerned. I sat her down and asked her about the affair, as it was the most pressing issue on my mind. She hesitated and attempted to dispute it at first, But then I showed her the photos her parents had given me. These were shots showing her car parked outside her coworker's house on nights she had told me she was working late. She tried to say they were just pals hanging out, but there was no reason for her to lie. Eventually, she was forced to reveal the truth. She had been cheating on me. I broke down as soon as she admitted it. This time, it was worse than previously because when it was only her parents informing me, I still hoped it was a misunderstanding. Hearing it from Nicole herself shattered any denial I had. I was hysterical, and while I don't remember all I said, I do recall there was a lot of screaming and shouting. Nicole began to cry, confessing that she had been silly and lost sight of what was important because she had grown bored in our marriage. She stated that the affair meant little to her and that she never expected me to find out. It simply made matters worse. If it didn't mean anything, she had no reason to do it. I was shocked to learn that she had wrecked our marriage because she was bored. I recall yelling at her about how much I trusted her, how I had always been there for her, and how she had given it all up for someone she hardly knew. I yelled until she collapsed into a pool of tears. At one point, things became so intense that she collapsed on the floor, wailing with her head in her hands while I screamed. It was a disaster, and just thinking about it makes me uneasy. Nothing about it seemed normal. When the ordeal ended, I informed her I was done and asked her to leave the house. She begged me, claiming she would end things with the other guy immediately and wanted another chance at our marriage. I informed her that as long as she was around, all I could think about was her affair. I needed time to comprehend things, which meant she needed to leave. More disagreements ensued, with her claiming that we could work things out and that remaining together was the proper thing to do. At the time, I was still battling to understand that she had cheated on me. The decision to work things out or leave her was secondary. First, I wanted to digest what had happened, something I couldn't do with her around. I didn't want to breathe the same air as her because she repulsed and irritated me so much. However, she refused to leave, which infuriated me to the point that I informed her I would leave instead. I couldn't take being near her anymore. She was still unhappy and told me I couldn't go because she wanted to work things out and stay married. She claimed it was all a mistake and that I couldn't leave her for something like this. I didn't even respond. I just left. I didn't bother packing anything and instead began driving aimlessly, unsure where to go. I didn't realize I might need to stay somewhere overnight until I eventually ran out of gas. I found the nearest motel and have stayed there ever since. Despite my best efforts to forgive and forget what Nicole did, our relationship has not improved. I simply can't forgive her. So, last week, after 3 days of deliberation, I filed for divorce. I hadn't spoken to Nicole since leaving the house, despite her attempts to contact me. The reality is, I have nothing else to say to her, since what she did is something I can never forgive or forget. However, my in-laws have been in close communication with me, checking in on me on a daily basis to ensure my well-being. I've been talking to them more because when I asked my own parents for aid, they weren't very helpful. They gave non-specific suggestions, such as, do what feels right, which was neither comforting nor useful. Feeling emotionally separated from my parents, I confided in my in-laws. I haven't told my friends yet, but I do need emotional support, which is why I've stayed close to Frank and Leah. Some people may find it unusual, but I'm extremely close to them and don't believe it's wrong. Nicole began messaging me more frequently after being served with the divorce papers, but I have yet to read any of her texts. I silenced her alerts so they wouldn't annoy me, but that doesn't mean I've moved on. Everything still hurts. To make matters worse, I am also struggling at work. I had to take an unexplained leave of absence since I was unable to commute from the motel, which is in the middle of nowhere. I am almost out of paid leave, and my employer recently called to inform me that if I do not return to work soon, I will be terminated. This added to my worry because I have huge bills coming up. Divorce is expensive, and I'll need to start looking for a new place to live. I had been discussing all of this with my in-laws in conversation, expecting little support, but they shocked me. They told me that Nicole had put me in this situation and they would rectify it. I had no idea what they were going to do, but a few hours later, they requested I come to their house right away. Nicole was present, and they wanted us to sort things out, not necessarily about the divorce, but at least about who would reside in the house. They proposed Nicole stay with them, while I needed the house to keep my job. I was hesitant to go because I did not want to confront Nicole, but my in-laws persuaded me, and I eventually accepted. When I arrived at their house, I was frightened to see Nicole after such a long time, but I tried not to let it show. For the first several minutes, we avoided looking at each other, We barely acknowledged each other's existence until my in-laws began the conversation. Frank and Leah offered that I take over the house so Nicole could live with them, which made sense given that they all worked in the same area. Losing the house would be a significant issue for me because it would mean losing my job without a stable place to live. Then, something unexpected occurred. Nicole began protesting that she did not see why she had to be the one to make such sacrifices. She said it was my fault we were divorcing and informed her parents that they, as her parents, should be on her side rather than mine. She accused them of supporting a cheater, which baffled us all. We stared at her, waiting for her to clarify what she was saying. Her tone was furious and full of conviction, and I briefly began to believe she might have something sensible to say. Unfortunately, she began spewing total rubbish, and I immediately knew she was just trying to make me look terrible in front of her parents so they wouldn't support me anymore. Nicole had no idea her parents had told me about the affair, so she probably assumed I had hired an investigator to collect those images myself. Nicole, completely oblivious to her parents' involvement, began fabricating a story alleging that I was having an affair with a mutual friend. She stated she had noticed how cozy the two of us were whenever we hung out together, and she even produced manipulated images to make it appear as if I was romantically involved with this friend. Nicole claimed that her own affair occurred because she was hurt after discovering my alleged adultery and that she only went out with her coworker as a form of revenge. She explained to her parents that now that everything was out in the open, she expected them to kick me out of the house and cut ties with me. She insisted that they discontinue their friendship with me because she was convinced I had duped them into thinking I was the victim. Nicole also accused me of planning the meeting with her parents in order to portray myself as innocent and place all the responsibility on her. At that point, I knew Nicole had made a serious mistake. She had just dug herself a deeper hole with her lies, hoping to expose me and regain her parents' support. Given the circumstances, that was an extremely poor decision. Sure enough, her mother, Leah, began ranting at her almost immediately, claiming she couldn't believe Nicole thought they'd fall for her falsehoods and badly altered images. Nicole was visibly shaken by her mother's reaction, as she had clearly not expected it. Her parents indicated that they had expected her to be honest after being caught, but she had instead doubled down on being a lying cheater. They even apologized to me, claiming that they felt they had failed to raise her correctly if she had become this person. Then came the big reveal. My in-laws told Nicole that they were the ones who had informed me about her affair and handed me the images. There was no point in lying anymore, because everyone knew the truth. Nicole's expression at that moment was priceless. A massive battle erupted, which was unavoidable. Nicole felt betrayed and furious that her parents had always treated me as if I were their own son, while seemingly being willing to sell out their own daughter for my sake. Her parents, understandably outraged, called her foolish for not realizing sooner that they were the ones who informed me about the affair. After all, they had asked her about it several times, questioning if she had a relationship with her coworker, which she had continuously denied. Nicole admitted that it had crossed her mind that her parents might have notified me, but she disregarded the possibility, feeling that as her parents, they would show her loyalty regardless of what she did. The dispute lasted a while before Nicole rushed out, claiming she didn't want to speak to any of us anymore. She stormed out, plainly agitated because she'd had enough of everyone. I felt a pang of pity for her, because I could imagine how difficult it must be not to have your own parents on your side. After things had settled down, my in-laws informed me that they had made up their minds. They intended to modify their will and make me the sole successor to their inheritance, believing Nicole did not deserve it and that I was a better choice. It was a momentous decision, and I was hesitant to accept such a significant quantity of money, knowing that it would essentially be taken from Nicole. I told them I needed some time to think it over because it was a huge deal, and I couldn't just agree without considering the repercussions. I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision, so I requested time, and they obliged. They promised me that I would have plenty of time to make my decision. It's been a few days, and I'm still unclear whether it's the moral and ethical thing to do. While Nicole did break our marriage through infidelity, the amount I would inherit is significant, and I am not sure if accepting it is fair. I've been thinking about it constantly, and I'm at a loss. That is why I am here, to get perspective on whether it is okay for me to accept my cheating, soon-to-be ex-wife's potential $2 million inheritance. Update 1. Thank you for your helpful feedback and support. I'm doing reasonably well emotionally, thank God. I've also talked to my friends about it, and they believe I should accept the money. After all, Nicole messed up badly, and if her parents want to make amends by leaving me the money, I should let them. My friends reminded me that Nicole not only cheated but also used fake images to try and frame me as the cheater. Her parents might have believed her if they hadn't already known the truth. Nicole was willing to go to such lengths to avoid culpability, so I really have no reason to feel guilty about accepting the inheritance. I have made up my mind. I will accept it. Nicole didn't care about my feelings when she was destroying our marriage for a guy she barely knew. If she is going to be angry with anyone, it should be her parents, not me. Update 2. Today, I contacted my in-laws, Frank and Leah, and informed them that I was willing to accept their offer. They were overjoyed and expressed gratitude for the opportunity to make things right following Nicole's actions. They informed me that Nicole had ceased all contact with them and blocked them on all platforms following our argument at their house. She had also submitted her 2-week notice and quit her job, as had her affair partner. I was shocked. I knew Nicole enjoyed her profession, and I suspected her father was grooming her to take over when he retired. Now he must find someone else. Nicole is clearly willing to give up everything because she refuses to accept responsibility for her own actions. My father-in-law's voice sounded disappointed. Despite Nicole's mistakes, she remains their daughter and only child. It impressed me that my in-laws emphasized doing the right thing over catering to their daughter's desires, which very few parents would likely do. I attempted to console them, but words weren't enough, so I decided to go see them tomorrow and spend some time with them. I know they must be lonely and hurt. Update 3. I've been staying in the motel for a few weeks now after leaving our home. Unfortunately, I was dismissed from my job, but the good news is that my father-in-law, Frank, spoke with a friend and found me a far better job at his buddy's company, so I guess it's working out okay in the end. The divorce proceedings have begun, and Nicole and I are pretty tense whenever we meet with the mediator. It's difficult for me to ignore her, but I know I need to. Nicole has already started dating and moved in with the other guy, which I know for a fact. I'm not shocked, but I am rather disappointed. I expected her to take longer to move on from me, given how long we had been together, but it plainly didn't mean much to her. I'm now trying to make sure it doesn't mean anything to me either. However, things with my in-laws, Frank and Leah, are going well. We no longer speak to Nicole, nor does she speak to us. We try not to bring her up because it's a delicate subject for all of us. It's sad, but at least the three of us are like a family now. My in-laws haven't amended their will yet, but they intend to do so when the divorce is finalized. They plan to make sure Nicole isn't aware of the change until after they're gone. We try to meet up frequently because we know we're all going through a difficult time and can help each other. I hope things improve over time, and maybe someday they will.